Snip, 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 snip. You know what today's episode is all about, Falcons fans. Cut candidates after the Week 2 performance against the Tennessee Titans. So today's episode is going to be all-encompassing from the very start of the preseason to at this point and kind of everything that's gone on in between. Welcome into Falcons Today by Chat Sports. My name is Moose, and we're going to dive right in. Now, reminder really quick, this next game, said by Raheem Morris, is a make-or-break game for some. This is obviously the last chance that some of these players will have to showcase their abilities in order to try to find a spot on the 53-man roster. Now, I'm going to give you 4 players that, at least to me right now, are probably likely to get cut. But before we do that, I got word from the bosses this morning that they're thinking about starting up a Buccaneers channel for Week 1. And while I look at that and go, I don't know that there's 12 Buccaneers fans that would even subscribe to that channel, here's what I need you to do. Help me get 25 subs on today's show, and if I show them that we can have multiple Falcons fans jumping in to support the claim that we don't want a Bucs Now channel, that will go a long way into stalling it. So hit subscribe. Let's start with our very first cut candidate, Carlos Washington Jr. You'll notice a trend here on today's video that there's a lot of players on this list that either A, have not showcased anything during the preseason with their performances, or B, haven't really been on the field. And Carlos Washington Jr. is one of those players in the latter category. He just hasn't been on the field very much. I mean, that's just the truth. Like, he's dealing with this hamstring injury. You never root for a player to be injured. However, we do know that RB1 and RB2 are pretty much solidified. Now, we could go back and forth on how many running backs the Falcons will keep. At this point, I'm inclined to believe that it's going to be 3. So that would lead us to the next logical conclusion that it's probably not going to be Carlos Washington Jr. In my opinion, because he hasn't played a snap this preseason, you're looking at a guy who has already supplanted him, not only with his availability, but with his performance on the field as well. That being, of course, Nathan Carter, who has been outstanding so far. I mean, you saw last game his ability to jump cut back up the middle, turn on the burners, had Le'Veon Bell-style patience. Everything was check, check, check. It looked great. And Nathan Carter is certainly making a case for that third running back spot behind Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Now, if there is a 4th running back that is kept, then maybe Carlos Washington Jr. finds himself that spot. However, right now I'm inclined to believe the Falcons are going to keep 3 running backs. And if you remember last season, history is kind of repeating itself. Washington lost his job to Jace McClellan. So it looks like right now the RB3 spot is Carter's job, and it's just like a back-to-back sort of deal. Everyone thought that Carlos Washington Jr. could find his way onto that 53 as the 3rd running back this year. It just never materialized. So let's go into our second cut candidate. We'll stay on the offensive side of the ball, and that being David Sills. Now, again, Sills might be a more obvious choice with these cut candidates, considering he's a little bit lower on the depth chart in terms of who the Falcons would keep at wide receiver. But I feel like there's a lot of Falcons fans that knew that 5th and 6th wide receiver spot for Atlanta was pretty much open. I mean, let's talk about the obvious. Darnell Mooney, Drake London, Ray McLeod, and, of course, Kaderil Hodge. But then 5 and 6 was a little bit more nebulous, a little bit more up there in the clouds. And I feel like the 2 that have definitely showed they've earned themselves a spot on the 53-man roster are Dylan Drummond and Chris Blair. And Blair and Drummond actually complement each other very well in terms of their styles of play. Drummond is a little bit more of that possessions wide receiver, Blair a little bit more of the burner. You can take a look at their preseason stats, which kind of highlight exactly what I'm talking about. 9 targets, 6 receptions, and 132 yards for Blair, but he's got 132 yards and 2 touchdowns, whereas Dylan Drummond has not found the end zone, but he does have 12 receptions, 15 targets, so he's getting targeted a bunch, 85 yards with a long of 25. So I look at this right now and I say those are the 2 that I would have as 5 and 6. And by the way, this is a very good problem to have if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, especially considering this wide receiver room is one that I don't think there's a lot of problems with. In fact, I'm not really worried about the offense as a whole. outside of the starting slow because a bunch of starters have not gotten their reps. But I will ask you this question, and of course, you're bound to disagree with me at some point, and that's okay. I want you to know that this is a channel where you can express your opinion, and let me know in the comment section down below. You and I are not always going to agree on certain things. We're going to have different takes. That's what makes football great. But if you agree, let me know. Say yes. And if you disagree, at least type no in the comment section down below. Now, before we get to our next couple of cut candidates, I do have to tell you about our sponsor of today's episode. And of course, that is Prize Picks. Let me tell you about Prize Picks, my friends. This app is incredible. All you have to do is go to your app store, find that little purple P with the black background, and click that download button. It really is that simple. But they've got so many amazing deals right now. It's the best way to win real money this football season. And by the way, preseason fully underway. Week 0 of college football starts this weekend. You can turn your picks into cash in less than 60 seconds with Prize Picks. It's very simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. It is also the best place to win cash while watching sports. Duh. Join millions of users and sign up today. So like I said, go to that app store, click that download button, and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, so we're going to continue on with our cut candidates here. And the third one I will also have sticking on the offensive side of the football. However, this is not a skill position player. No. This is an offensive lineman. And someone that I've noticed has had quite the struggle in his first 2 preseason games. 7th-round draft pick out of Wisconsin, Jack Nelson, the backup behind Caleb McGarry. Look, a 7th-rounder, you always want the highest of hopes for them because you took him at the very bottom of the draft, meaning there's a lot of development that has to happen. Maybe you're not nearly as talented as the other players, but still good enough to get drafted. Maybe there's a glimmer of hope. And right now with Jack Nelson, it just feels like the game is passing him by. It's way too quick. He had 2 pre-snap penalties against the Titans, 1 against the Lions. So that's 3 already in 2 preseason games. Here's the other issue. I just don't know where he fits in with the Falcons offensive linemen that, in my opinion, are pretty much guaranteed to make the team. I mean, Jake Matthews, Matthew Bergeron, Ryan Newsel, Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, they're your starters right there. There's 5. Now, we can go back and forth again on should they keep 9 offensive linemen? Should they keep 10? In fact, you're starting to see, in order to make room for more skilled players, a lot of teams are keeping 9 offensive linemen. But Storm Norton's going to make the team, et cetera, et cetera. I just think he's kind of a practice squad guy right now. Talent-wise, skill-wise, he could be one of those players, especially with the likes of what's going on with Storm Norton, who is going to be a major cog in this whole operation. Because his lower body injury, there's really no timetable right now for when he's going to return. He was asked, Raheem Morris was asked about this timetable of return, and he gave kind of a up-in-the-air answer like, we're not entirely sure, we're still evaluating. That's basically the vibe that I got. Now, I think Storm is clearly a lock to make this roster, but in the event that he does make the 53-man roster, and he gets placed on IR, Nelson could be that next man up. Although right now, notably for a performance perspective, he is definitely struggling with, this job, so to speak. Our last cut candidate here on today's episode. We're going to go to the defensive side of the ball. Now, remember, there's a lot of other guys that I could have put on this list. And trust me when I say this, I can't put all cut candidates into one video. We'd be here for an hour and a half. But the last one that I've got right now on my list is Clark Phillips. And Clark Phillips, to me, this is just like the Falcons are weeding out because of how much they've brought in this secondary. It's an injury problem, not necessarily a talent problem. And I don't know that, Clark Phillips is the most talented player. Certainly last year he got burned on a bunch of stuff, but his PFF grade was pretty decent, right? Like, this was a good enough starter on the outside. Now, I know that Raheem Morris, before the draft, had said, hey, look, we're going to give him some looks at inside corner. Well, then he got injured during this preseason, and he's dealing with this rib injury right now. And there's a lot of other players that are not only locks to make the roster, but are also performing really, really well. I'm going to go back with you for 1 second on what Raheem Morris said about Clark Phillips. And this is also from Falcons Sports Illustrated. Phillips, who has been noticeably absent for the last several practices due to a rib injury, is in the thick of a competitive cornerback battle, which obviously the Falcons put a lot of emphasis on this year. The team will likely keep just 6 or 7 players at the position. Keep that in mind because we're going to talk about it in a second. And at least 4 of those spots are locked down. He will continue to compete with the likes of Mike Ford Jr., Natrone Brooks, and Lamar Jackson. So let's talk about the locks right now because we are just hearing from not only, Falcons Sports Illustrated, who's directly connected with the team, but we're also hearing from different coaches, Raheem Morris himself, as to who is gaining a lot of traction right now at this spot. Well, we know A.J. Terrell's going to make it. We know Mike Hughes and D. Alford and Billy Bowman are all going to make it. Billy Bowman was just taking first-team reps. So these 4 are absolute locks. Now, let's go with the assumption that they're going to keep 1 more rather than 1 fewer. They're going to go with 7 corners. Well, the other ones, you got to go Mike Ford because of his ability to do it also on special teams. Natrone Brooks has had an unbelievable camp. Stood out again yesterday, another pick. And then in the game against the Titans, after that James Pierce Jr. pressure, forced the interception to Natrone Brooks. So by all accounts, Natrone Brooks is playing outstanding right now. I think he's made his case that he deserves at least a spot on the 53, which leaves 1 other spot for Clark Phillips to compete for, and that's with Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson has had some good moments this preseason, and he's also had some really bad moments. So I feel like this is a toss-up. And remember, there are a lot of others that could be on this list. But as of right now, because of Lamar Jackson's ability to be on the field, because remember, the age-old saying is your best ability is availability, Clark Phillips is on the outside looking in. I mean, and I hate saying that because, it's an injury. The guy can't control it. However, it's a business. There's a 53-man roster that needs to be done by next week, and this could be it. So, there are plenty of others that I could have had on this list, but these are the ones that at least have stuck out to me so far. But let me know. Tell me a player that you think the Falcons should cut. Had to burp there for a second. Tried to keep that stifled so I didn't gross you out too much. But again, let me know in the comment section down below. We're always going to disagree. Sometimes we'll agree, and that's the great thing about football. We can go back and forth and have a differencing of opinion, but still root for the exact same team. A reminder that if you want to prevent the Buccaneers Now channel from starting up, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. It really is that easy. And also, if you love free Falcons content 365 days a year, I've got you covered. And if you don't like it after a week, you can unsubscribe. That is my promise to you. We are going to be back tomorrow with our very first Falcons live show. I am so excited to finally get live on Falcons Today. But until then, my name is Moose. Rise up, Falcons fans. And of course, be cool.